welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Ask the Experts podcast with Alka. I am so grateful. Thank you to each and every one who come back week in, week out to listen, learn, and grow. And this means so much to me for your valuable time that you take out. And I am so grateful. So, as my commitment to you, as my community and my audience, is to help find people who can help us live a life more meaningful, deeper, and authentic. And my amazing guest today, Scarlett O'Connor, is doing exactly that. She's making such an impact. Scarlett is a trauma-informed life and business coach. She is a 2 times world champion bodybuilding athlete. Scarlett is a founder of Two Scars, Two Strengths. And despite facing numerous challenges and setbacks Scarlett has endured in her life, she has gone on to transform her life, having a successful career and building a very successful career that she is just going strong, and she has an unwavering resilience. So Scarlett, welcome to the show.
Oh, Alka, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. So who is Scarlett O'Connor? Do share with us your backstory.
Oh, wow. Who is Scarlett O'Connor? That's a question. Well, I guess in brief, I was raised by, let's say, 2 people that maybe shouldn't have had children. Although I hope that people are glad that they did and that I am here and able to help people today. But yeah, I grew up with what I now understand to be a narcissistic mother and a mentally ill father. Was kind of dragged around as a child, mistreated, neglected, abused, and then at 12 years old my mum kicked me out, and after that I went into the care system, and at 16 I had my little boy, and I became a real go-getter. I think before that, probably actually I started working when I was about 14, but despite it appearing, and it kind of always did, that I might have it like all together and be this really confident person. What I realize now, being older, is that I spent a lot of my life running in fight or flight mode. And I achieved some amazing things. I had a child at 16, and despite not having a family or a great education, I went on to build a great career, had a great career in IT, managed projects globally, took my son on the most amazing holidays, was the mum that I always wanted, I guess, and the mum I wanted to be. So yeah, achieved some really great things. But I spent most of my life, I guess, feeling like it didn't matter what I achieved. I still felt like I wasn't really worth it, and that just struggled a lot with self-doubt, with negative self-talk, with beating myself up, with high levels of anxiety. But to be honest, nobody would have ever known. And I didn't even realize that that was what I suffered from, to be honest. I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't know any of this stuff, because I realize now we don't actually really get taught that. So yeah, in 20
we don't talk about it. We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
No. And I spent my life like that, like thinking I needed to be somebody that I wasn't, that I needed to show up as a particular person. Like, I worked in a company for over 10 years, and pretty much everybody I worked with didn't know I was a mum. They didn't know I had a child.
Oh, wow.
They wouldn't have known anything about me, because I didn't share it. I went to work, I spoke work talk, and the minute that the conversation would go somewhere else, I'd be like, well, either on you or back to work. Let's not discuss me.
Why did you feel you didn't want to share it? Why did you feel that?
Because I felt ashamed.
Yeah. Oh, you felt ashamed. Mm-hmm.
I felt ashamed. I felt ashamed for being me. I felt ashamed for the things I'd been through. I thought that I needed to be like other people. Like, what I realize now is that many people feel in that way. Many people have been through some horrific things in their lives, but they do the same, and they hide it and they push it down, and they show up being a way that they think they need to be. And I'm not saying that you need to like tell everybody all your problems, or that everybody needs to know everything you've been through, of course not. But that feeling inside of thinking, like, I can't really be me, I can't, I feel I'd feel scared to tell anybody because they're going to judge me, and they probably won't like me then. And like that, having that internal battle is really difficult, and it's really sad, because I realize now, I thought I was the only person dealing with that for many years, which may seem naive, but we're only in our own heads, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I realize now that I'm certainly not.
Yeah.
That I'm certainly not, and that it's okay that the things that I went through affected me, and that it's okay to learn to love me for me being me. And it was just a crazy concept, I guess, that I didn't really understand most of my life. Like, I think not being shown love, not being loved, the thought or even understanding of how I could be loved was just so alien, was just so
Right. I mean, it's understood. It's understood because when you haven't had the love from your parents, or you haven't had the love from people around you, it's just very difficult how we can navigate through life.
Yeah. And actually,
Not knowing, being
I read something
abandoned, and those feelings.
on a forum only yesterday, and it's a lady on there who's kind of in her 70s, and she's saying that her mum is in a forum about narcissistic parents, and she's still got the same question going through her head, which is, why did my mum do it to me? What is wrong with me? And it's so sad to read that, because that was the questions that I had for most of my life. And so, like, people would say, and I get it logically, like, it's not your fault that it happened. And logically, I'd agree with that. Like, of course it wasn't my fault. Like, of course it wasn't. But I had the same questions as like this lady I was talking to yesterday, which is, but why did it happen then? So what's wrong with me?
Right.
And so, even though logically it might be, well, it wasn't my fault, subconsciously, deep in there, in those deep rooted beliefs, was that it is something to do with me. Like, it is my fault that it happened, because there's something wrong with me. Otherwise, why would it have happened?
What would have happened? Yes.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, that is logic. Why would it happen, and why did it happen? It is logical for anyone to ask those questions. Because I know someone, and we were just talking about how she was raised in two families, like her biological parents gave her up. They gave her up, and she was brought up in another family. And that family, she got so much love. But you know what, Scarlett, it's very sad. And it's very, I mean, to me, I feel when, kids are just traumatized, and their biological parents give them up for whatever reason that may be. Maybe that their parents couldn't really afford them. Maybe their parents were going through things themselves, that they can handle children, or can't handle a child, so they have to give them up to foster care. So I can totally understand how that will make a child feel, how that will make you feel, and knowing, oh, is there something wrong with me?
Yeah, because that's what you do. You get left with these beliefs that it's actually something wrong with you, and then those beliefs shape everything about us. They shape our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our reactions. They literally shape everything. And like, that's why I think that most of my life I was in an internal battle, because it was like, I get it logically, but that it's not logic, is it? It's what's deep in our subconscious, and deep in there it was that, well, it must be me. Like, if I think about the question that I'm asking, well, what's wrong with me, that comes back to then me believing that there is something wrong with me. And I would have never realized that I even had those beliefs, because logically it wasn't my fault. But it's not logic, it's what's deep rooted in those deep beliefs. And like, for me, what that meant was that I had guards around me. Like, and like I mentioned, like I wouldn't tell anybody about me. Not that I still think I'd go out and just tell everybody about, but um yeah, I felt ashamed. I carried shame around with me, carried anger around with me, carried all these emotions, fear of abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
fear that I'd be hurt, fear that, and I never really had any idea that that's what was going on, like um
I
very
guess we
much.
don't. I guess we
No,
we
we
don't.
don't.
No, we don't. Yeah.
No, we don't. And that's kind of why I've chosen to change careers and do what I do now, because it was a long that journey of studying, like, how does trauma affect the brain, how does that affect our programming, which I now understand to be programming, that we literally are programmed. That's why we don't think logically about much. We might
Mm-hmm.
like to think that we do, but we generally don't. We're just ran by our programming. And it was upon like learning all of that, it was like, oh wait there, wow, I've actually been programmed by all of that stuff.
Right.
And that's what's shaping how I feel. That's what's shaping my thoughts. That's the reason that I experience anxiety. Not that I knew what that was before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is the reason that I'm guarded and I'm in protection mode. And that if I get even the slightest hint or sign that somebody's going to hurt me, even though I might be misunderstanding that completely, I'm going to see it as that, and I'm going to put my guards up and I'm going to push them away,
Yes. Yeah. You just put
because
your walls just go up.
yeah, because you're running from that place of fear,
Mm,
because you've got those beliefs in there that you're always going to get hurt, that
right.
somebody's always going to abandon you, that there's, like, for me, like lots of like there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
So this, like, it's going to go wrong anyway. This person's going to hurt me anyway. This person's going to, and you're kind of always looking for it.
So it's like that
Like,
flight or fright mode. You
it is.
right? It's because logically that's what we want to do. Logically,
Yeah,
logic says, okay, the guys are just going to go up because we're going to be hurt. Someone's going
yeah.
to hurt us, and protection. I mean, I know I can relate to that because that was me. Once upon a time,
Mm.
about good 10 years ago of my life, when my marriage broke up and I went to that very traumatic time in my life, I felt, I was abandoned. I was not physically abused, but I was verbally abused. And then knowing how I felt, that trauma that was just inside of me. And I've just like what you said, I felt worthless. I felt
Yeah.
all those beliefs that, just creep up. And and I want to talk, Scarlett, about all the trauma that you endured. And for the viewers listening, how did you begin to take in those steps to heal yourself? Could you share with us what steps you took to heal?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's very much been a journey. Like, it would be lovely, wouldn't it, if there's like this magic pill, or there's
Right,
something
isn't
you can
it?
just do and instantly it's
Yeah,
like, it's
everything's cured.
okay. I think, yeah, exactly. I think awareness is the first key step. Like, I spent most of my life like achieving great things, always moving forward, being resilient, as they would say. And that was great. But like we've just spoken about, I was being ran by my programming and had no idea sometimes why I'd get angry, why I'd get upset, why I would put my guards up, some of the choices I've made in life. Didn't really understand them. So I think awareness for me was definitely the first step. In 2015, I was on a girls' holiday in Spain and I was assaulted by a police officer. He
Mm,
smashed my face off a marble floor and almost killed me.
wow.
Now, uh, that that incident, that moment, what I went through, that event, really affected me. And it was after that point that I began to suffer from complex PTSD. Now, again, I had no idea about any of this. I had no idea I'd been running with PTSD for most of my life. I had no idea what complex PTSD was. All
What
I
is
knew
complex
is that
PTSD?
it's PTSD really, but where you have multiple traumas. So
Right.
not just traumas as a child or one event, but more events as you go through life. So, which
Mhm.
is what makes it complex, and it can end up just altering the way that you think, behave, your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions, actions, and that can be something that you just end up almost just living with, just running from this place of having PTSD. And I was in that place, and what I thought was that I was crazy, right? So my brain was always going 100 miles an hour. I couldn't work out how to kind of calm it down. I felt really unsafe about a lot. Everything became a worry to me. Everything started to bother me. And I had no idea that what I was going through, because my programming was just get up and get on with it.
Right.
And so I felt very confused. Like, why can't I just seem to do it in the same, like, why is this bothering me so much? Like,
Right.
why am I overthinking everything? Why is my heart going 100 miles an hour all the time? Why are my thoughts going crazy?
Mm-hmm.
And it was after that point, and really a number of things like that, maybe getting upset with my son and then feeling really bad for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like coming home, seeing a pair of shoes on the side and thinking, I've told you to clear those up. Like, why haven't you cleared those up? And then going, instead of just being able to sit down or talk and say, could you clear up the shoes? It would be, why haven't you cleared up the shoes? Why?
Right.
You know what I mean? And this anger would come out. That was unnecessary. Then I'd feel guilty, go and say sorry, feel terrible inside, beat myself up for it. The same happened in relationships. And it was along that one day I picked up my phone and I was like, right, why do I get angry when I don't want to? What? Because I wanted to understand me. I wanted to understand my mum, because my mum was a very angry person. I wanted to understand the police officer, because I might not have got an apology from him. And I don't know, maybe he didn't regret what he did. But I mean, and many humans out there are good people. There's a lot of bad in the world,
Right.
and maybe he is just a bad, evil person. But there's also a chance that he maybe didn't mean to do what he did, and it happened because of his programming. So I wanted to understand, like, did he really mean to almost kill like a young white girl? Like, was that his idea? Like, the song, I don't know. Did that really? So yeah, I wanted to understand it. And it was along that journey I learned that we generally only carry anger as adults if we go through things as a child that we morally disagree with. And because we don't have a voice to be able to voice it, we carry it with us, which is why it then becomes part of our programming, and it comes out in ways that we don't want it to come out in. Not necessarily as bad as a police officer, maybe, like I mentioned, being a bit short fused, having reactions sometimes that are just not really
just
necessary.
Out of nowhere.
Just out of nowhere, going from 0 to 100 and it just not being really necessary.
What happened?
Yeah, because I always thought that anger would be like the police officer. Do you know what I mean? Somebody who is, I don't know, throwing chairs or beating people up, but it's not. Like, anger, a lot of the time we internalize, especially as kind, nice people. A lot of the time it comes back on us: self-hatred, negative self-talk, beating ourselves up internally. So I think becoming aware of that was probably a real catalyst for me. So I was like, oh, wait, there is a reason that I get like this.
Right.
It's not because I'm crazy, right? Like I keep thinking that I am. It's because there's actually trauma held in my body, held in my brain, and I need to work out now how to overcome that. So for me, it was learning about self-love, like learning to be compassionate and kind to myself. Like, our brain only works in images and pictures, images and words. And so something that I was always really bad at, and I realized most people are as well, is the way I spoke to myself internally.
Your self-talk, yeah.
Yeah, and geez, it was so bad. It was so negative. Like, I'd never speak to anybody else like that in my life. And I think a lot of us think, well, it doesn't really matter because it's inside my head, right? So what does it matter anyway? No one else can hear it.
Yeah.
But what I realized along this journey of really understanding, like, how do our brains work, is that voice is a key fundamental part of why we feel like we do, the actions or reactions that we have. Like, it plays a key role in us every day. So part of my healing journey was learning about that, releasing the anger at a subconscious level, which I did through a combination of tools, which I've now actually combined into like a program. It's what I take my clients through. And that's not a logical level. That's to release the emotion at a subconscious level.
Right.
and yeah, really learning to love me, I guess. And I think it's something that it is a journey. Like I
It's a
mentioned, it's
journey.
not
It's always a
something.
process. I mean, it's a
Is it?
process. It's never the destination. It's what we
No.
need to go through, right? It's what we need to go through. I have to
Yes.
go through that to knowing, okay, well, this is what happened. This is the trauma that happened in my life. How do I need to move forward? And it's to, learning, having, like you said, is doing a lot of inner work. And I'm sure you did. I'm sure a lot of people did. I'm sure, I did. I had to do a lot of inner work and to starting to love me. But like I said, it's a process.
It's a process.
It's a process that we need to go through to heal. So, Scarlett, how would you describe trauma and why is it misunderstood? Because I'm sure it can be.
I think, yeah, I think it's massively misunderstood.
It is.
Yeah. I think even like when we think about like anger, a lot of people think, well, that means that somebody's like I used to, that means that somebody's got like an actual problem, like they're throwing chairs around, they're beating people up.
Right.
Like, no, they're not. Like, you see a lot of, like I said at the beginning, like I now understand my mum to be narcissistic. Like I would say that she suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Now I understand that. I understand that her brain will be formed in a way that doesn't really allow her to empathize. Doesn't work in the way a lot of other people's brains work. But
Right. Yeah.
Like narcissism comes through trauma. That's the reality of it. We become narcissistic. We demonstrate narcissistic behaviors because we have insecurities.
Right.
And like insecurities are, everybody has insecurities. Of course, we all do. But like I know for most of my life, I felt ashamed about my insecurities. So I wasn't going to show up with them. Like I wasn't going to talk about them. I wasn't going to be vulnerable about it. I wasn't going to be, and then I learned about what narcissistic behaviors really are. And I was like, oh shit, like let's be really honest. I demonstrate some of those.
Right.
Like I'm getting angry when I don't want to get angry. My son's having to deal with that. That's not kind. That's there's a narcissistic behavior there. Like, so I've actually got some of those because of what I've been through. So like that, I think is really confusing. Like I joined a lot of forums about narcissism or on Instagram. And I mean, some of these pages do so much damage to people because they're calling out what somebody like my mother is. Like they're talking about a person like that. And it's very easy to like, I don't know, look at an ex or look at a partner or look at somebody and think, well, they're all of these bad, they're an evil person and they're like this. And but I think the reality is that like a lot of people demonstrate narcissistic behaviors, but are completely unaware because we're just not taught. We're not taught how trauma affects the brain. We're not taught what that does to our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, reactions, like how that can impact others. Like we're constantly in cause and effect, like all the time. Like if I said something to you now and wasn't very nice, you would respond or you'd be affected by it, one or the other. You'd either go straight into effect and be affected by the things I've said, or you'd respond. And your response might be to just block me out and not worry about me, or your response might be to come at me. But either way, we're constantly at cause and effect with people, and I don't think we're just not taught enough about how this affects us, how our brains are affected by this trauma that we go through. So I think it's widely misunderstood. I don't think it's spoken about enough. I think a lot of blame and shame is actually still out there, which adds to your own feelings of shame and embarrassment and guilt. And so, I think like social media is particularly difficult because it's lots of pictures of people living their best life and everything being amazing and everything being great. And there's just not a lot of talk about reality. And there's a lot of, I don't know, inspirational, motivational posts, which are really great. But I don't think some of them line up with what's actually true, what's actually
true. And I think, you're right. The truth needs to be told as to like, if you face, say, for example, you are in a relationship or you meet a guy And so that's my question. And you talked about, a narcissist. How does one know that you are with a narcissist person? Because I was dating someone and he was narcissist. I got to find out later on that he was narcissistic. And I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
I mean, he was a doctor. But how does one know? Because I didn't know. Do they have like a camouflage that you don't know 1 minute? It's almost like I kind of felt it was like bipolar. Is that how you would
Uh,
describe a narcissist person? Do they have like a camouflage? Like, how does one know that they're narcissist?
I think it can be difficult because there's
Yeah.
all levels,
Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
there's many people in the world who are good, kind people, but they're affected by their trauma. And so they show up with some narcissistic behaviors with just no idea really of the impact it's having on the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and
Right.
I don't know what your ex-husband's like. He may just be completely narcissistic and a complete like asshole and have no even care for that at all. But a lot of people, I think, in the world are showing up in that way and hurting others because they're so unaware, because they're so unaware. But it's not necessarily that they are completely a full-blown
Right.
narcissist.
Yeah. It's just that
Um,
they're not
and
aware
I
of themselves.
that it's that they're not aware. But I think there's a difference between somebody who's not aware, is never going to become aware, is never going to take responsibility, is always going to blame others. That's somebody who's narcissistic. Do I mean who's always going to throw it back on you, who's always going to make it your fault or somebody else's fault, who's never going to take responsibility, from then a person who will take responsibility but just doesn't know what they don't know.
Yes.
Like and that's a different, and it's really difficult like to face yourself in the mirror and go,
Mm.
wait there, I'm toxic.
Yes.
Wait there,
Yeah.
actually I'm hurting people, and it's because of me. Like it's
Mhm.
actually it's something inside of me that I need to change. It's something, and that's like I just put my hand, like I've done it myself, and I put my hands up to everybody else who's doing it and has done it. Like it's very easy to just go, it's their fault and it's because of them and it's
To
because
blame.
of
Yes.
blame. Yeah, but to actually stand up and go, well, actually there's parts of me as well that needs that.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big difference between somebody who's narcissistic and is really just going to do a lot of damage in this world, to somebody who's narcissistic but it will take responsibility and change it. Do you know what I mean? We'll do the work to change it. Like there's a lot of people in this world that have caused harm, and they regret it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right, they do have remorse, they do have empathy, they do live with regret, and living with regret is one of the most painful things like for anybody. And for people who are experiencing that, like it may be that yeah, they've got narcissistic behaviors, but they also want to do something about it.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
yeah, I think the people who don't and will never take responsibility, that's the people to be scared of. Like
Because they're gonna repeat their actions. They're gonna keep doing that
always.
always, right?
Always,
So
always. And you
comes
see a
down.
lot of people in really high profile positions in the world who are very narcissistic, and they get that power, I guess, that by belittling others, by telling lies, by making themselves look like something they're not.
Right.
um and again, it comes back to that, like the way their brain's been developed, but they
Mhm.
do have all these insecurities, but they're never going to
Then they're
sit in
never gonna
them.
admit that.
No, and they're never going to admit that, and it's always going to be somebody else's. And that's where like the whole gaslighting comes in as well. Like if you say to somebody, I feel this way because of like this conversation or what it is you've done, they're going to be the
Mhm.
ones turning around and going, well, it's because of you,
Right.
it's because you're
Exactly.
like this, or yeah, like so yeah, I think it can be more difficult, but I think the more that we understand about like this subject, how this actually shows up, the easier it is for us to one, spot it in ourselves, which let's be honest, we have no control about anybody else. So
Mhm.
the only person that we ever can do anything about is ourselves.
Exactly.
And I think upon doing that, it makes it much easier to be able to spot that in others.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
And I think if you hadn't gone through that, you would not be able to help other people relive, from their trauma, from their past lives that they've endured to helping people right now. And talking about you are now helping so many people living, helping them get through their trauma. And I love the name Two Scars, Two Strength. And you are the founder of Two Scars, Two Strength. Can you share with us what's the mission behind Two Scars, Two Strength?
Yeah, okay. So really helping professionals to become their best selves. Like,
Hmm.
it's as you mentioned, Alka, like when you go through things, it knocks you, right? It knocks your
Yes.
confidence, your self-worth, your
Hmm.
self-esteem. It can
Hmm.
be really confusing as well when you go through emotional abuse, because like the first thing that you said earlier is, well, it wasn't physical, it was emotional. Like an emotional abuse, like people could like quite often go, well, I didn't go through that, or they weren't beating me up, or they didn't do this, or no, instead you were broken down internally, like, and the effects of that are massive. Like that, they impact your self-worth, self-esteem, how you feel about yourself, confidence, anxiety. They affect everything internally, don't they?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, Skies to Strength is really about um, helping professionals to become their best selves. So many of the people I work with, or professionals that I work with, have been through some ordeals in their life, but the same as me, it's like, well, I did, but I'm okay, like I'm all right. But what a lot of them don't realize is that they can be so much more than they actually are when they work through and understand how their
Yes.
brain works, how to get the
Yeah.
most from it. Because again, we just don't get taught about, yeah, trauma. So I spent 15 years in IT, and one of my skills in IT, I managed projects globally, and one of my natural skills was to help people who don't understand technical stuff and help to break the divide. This meant that we could deliver projects easily. Leaders could understand why things don't
Yes.
work or why they're not working. And so using that skill, I now, after studying years of neuroscience, how the brain works, how trauma affects us, learning the tools to be able to reprogram ourselves, I now help my clients to do exactly that without them having to understand all the jargon and all
Yeah.
the technical stuff around trauma. So
Right.
helping them to make changes easily, um, without having to spend years doing what I've done and actually understanding the technicalities of how
Right.
does the brain work.
Yeah. So what are the tools that you put people through? What are those tools that you can share with us?
So I have a couple of different tools. Like I have tools that I like. It wouldn't be something I would say, right, do this, because it would be something you go through with
Mhm.
me, or something I've actually made in online. So I created a master emotions healing program. Now that's something that I went through myself, which allowed me to release the anger, guilt, shame, embarrassment, fear. And that program, I was working with clients one-to-one for years, and I was taking them through that process. And this year I put it into an online program which is affordable for everybody, so that I can help way more people and they can go through this and release their stuff,
Mhm.
knowing that this is not only what helps us to show up as the best version of us, but it helps to break those generations of trauma, helps you to learn to love yourself in a way that you maybe haven't been able to, because those parts of you are separated. It helps you to feel more whole and complete and release that burden.
Right.
Um, Other tools that are really helpful, that can simply say, is like really recognize, like we mentioned, that voice, like the images in your mind and that voice that you have are really powerful. And what a lot of us tend to do, like you hear about anxiety, and that if you're anxious, you're thinking about the future. Now, yes, that's true, and that causes anxiety. But what a lot of other people tend to do as well is, when they're in relationships or in situations that aren't helpful to them, they are imagining something very different. They're
Mm.
imagining how it could be, what it would look like if this
Right.
person was kinder, was nicer, did treat them in a certain way.
So they're future
And
casting.
yeah, and so while they might not feel anxious,
Mm.
so like because they're not in a place of worry. They're actually fooling themselves, and I've been there, into thinking that it's going to be something that it isn't, rather than being in this moment and facing this reality. And this is something like that. The brain is so powerful. And when you're imagining what it could be like, you'll make excuses for why you're in what you're in now. What it could be different. Well, if they did do that, let's think about where you're at right now. So I think for people to really just understand and become aware that the images that they're having will either keep them in something that they don't want, maybe won't make them happy, could make them fear things. Like if you think about, oh, I really want to do something, and then you don't do it, it's usually because you imagine what could go wrong. You imagine it going wrong, like whatever that is doing, even if that's, I don't know, I've just hired a bike, getting on a bike, hiring a bike and go down the road. You might not do it because you can see, I don't know, you've already imagined a car hitting you, or you've imagined falling off and going into the stream.
You don't do it.
So you don't go and do it. So the brain has a lot of power. I think understanding that, those images that you're seeing every day, the images that are being created, and the voice, the things that you're saying to yourself, like if you can become aware of those and start really paying attention to them, you'll begin to recognize how much they dictate your behavior, and be able to take the power back in a way by just recognizing that actually it's those images that are making you have the thoughts you have, the feelings you have, and the actions or inactions or that you take.
Exactly.
So I hope that's helpful in some way.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? And I love sitting down with people who have ideas, and I really have, great admiration. Now, trauma, as we talked about, is very much misunderstood. And with trauma, there comes a lot of shame. How do you even deal around trauma, being misunderstood, the shame around it? Now, as you said, we know that what the trauma you've endured, do you think it impacts people in a negative way, in any shape or form?
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Like this month is actually childhood abuse, or April is childhood abuse awareness month every month. So this month, I'm actually putting lots of stuff onto my media and do in April to help raise awareness about this, because like shame or depression, which comes from shame and feelings of guilt and embarrassment, is like one of the biggest causes of death in the whole world. Like, so that's how important it is. I mean, this carrying shame around with you can lead you to having really poor mental well-being. Like, and having poor mental well-being is going to affect how you show up. It's going to affect how you feel. And like, whilst there's lots of, I don't know, diseases and things like that people are working on, I think one key thing that we really need to work on as a society, as a world, is the problem that we have with suicide.
Yes,
is the problem that we have with mental well-being. Because it's one of the biggest causes of death, and yet it's something that's still really misunderstood. And so I don't think it's simple. I don't think it's definitely not as simple as me going, right, okay, well, I think that it's like this, or I think like this is what's worked for me. It's much more complex. But I think as a world, this needs to be something that we are working on to improve. And I think we are. I think people are becoming more woke. It's definitely changing. I know when I was a child, my dad had mental illness. So he was a schizophrenic, which is probably why mental health has always mattered to me so much, because my dad didn't come into the world as schizophrenic. That happened through the traumas that he went through. So he wasn't mentally ill, he became mentally ill, which is why I think it's always mattered to me. And I've always been very need to look after my mental well-being, because poor mental well-being can lead to a breakdown can lead to mental illness. And so I think it's really important understanding that I couldn't understand really. I've got everything great. I've got a great career. I've got a beautiful son. I own our own house. We go on amazing holidays. Everything's great. Why do I hate who I am? It makes no sense really. Why do I hate the person that I am? Well, I understand now that it's because of what I've been through, right?
Do you still
But
have those
carrying
moments?
that,
Would you say you
um,
still have those moments that you still hate yourself, no matter what? If some stuff comes up, do you what goes through your mind today?
not in the same way
Not in the
anymore.
same way. Right.
No, no, 100% not. I think, and it's like it's even hard sometimes to think back and remember exactly how different it was, like
Hmm.
compared to how it is now.
Right.
But yeah, the way that I felt before was I really hated on who I was. Like I mentioned, I would have never have told anybody about anything I'd been through. Yet now I'm in a position where I'm very vulnerable. I feel very open. I don't feel ashamed to stand up and go, hey, I was abused. Hey, this I went through this. Not in a
Right.
way of like, oh, get the violins out. In a way of I'm going to raise awareness for this.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
exactly. Yeah.
but
You
I
want to be the
would, if I
voice.
hadn't have done my healing, there is no way I'd be doing this. No, no, no chance. I'd still be in the same career. I'd still be doing exactly the same things. I'd still be struggling internally, and nobody would have a clue. Um, so yeah, I feel much more empowered now. Of course, like negative talk comes up, and when it does, I kind of go, "Hey, like, no, don't talk to yourself like that.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. Oh, okay, like, yeah, I don't know. You do look like that, or you did that. Okay, well, you need to give yourself like need to be a bit kinder to yourself, Scott. So I think uh what like they say, don't they? It's like mothering yourself.
Hmm.
And I guess that's exactly what it is. It's like it's actually being a mother to me internally. And I recommend that to everybody. Like like I say, you need to be your own best friend. So
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
like you've
You
got
got
to
to know
all the
you.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, be a cheerleader, be supportive, be loving, be kind. And what's really sad is I thought for many years I was the only person naively going through this. And yet pretty much like I'm traveling at the moment and I can meet just a random person and they ask what I do and I say, and within moments it's apparent that they don't love themselves, that they
Wow.
hold on to all this pain and this
Hmm.
shame and this, yeah, and they almost, and when they talk it reminds me of where I used to be, that I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand what love was, like how to love myself. It made no sense. And why would anybody want to love me?
Hmm.
Like, so I think, yeah, like you talked, it's a journey. But now if I notice that I'm giving myself a hard time, I generally have a conversation with myself, and the other part of me is really bloody nice.
Yeah.
Like they're really kind and they're really loving, and yeah, they're really supportive. And so that part of me has to poke its head up if it notices the horrible part isn't. Go,
Exactly.
hey, no, 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 no.
That's right. And you mentioned, how you need, there was so many nuggets right there, but you talked about how you need to, if you don't love yourself, if you don't appreciate yourself, mothering yourself, quote unquote. So we need to do that. And I know there are times when stuff does come up and I may react to a certain situation, may react to something, but then I need to acknowledge and I need to say, okay, Alka, wait a minute. Why did you react in a certain way? Why did you respond in a certain way? But we need to acknowledge and have the
Yeah,
self acceptance and love you, because if you didn't love you, you would not be in a position today of helping people,
no.
being a coach. So when you got into bodybuilding, was that when you were still healing yourself? How did the bodybuilding journey,
Yeah.
how did that come about?
Yeah. So I kind of got into fitness in about my 20s.
Okay.
I had a baby belly, I had a child at 16, and
Mhm.
I had a baby belly and was quite uncomfortable with it. And I realized when I was about 21 that I was really unfit. Like obviously I hadn't really gone to school, so I'd never really been into fitness, never done that. So
Right.
I'd always been pretty unfit, probably. And I started going to the gym when I was about 21, like, because I decided, okay, enough is enough. time to do something about this. Nobody's going to it's not going to happen for me. And that was probably around the same sort of time that all the magazines were filled with women having tummy tucks and all these celebrities having tummy tucks everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. But okay, I don't have the money for that. So I'm going to go and work on it myself. And I actually remember a guy in the gym one day saying to me, if you start weight training, you'll get rid of that stomach. And I remember just looking at him thinking, you ain't got a clue, mate. Like, what are you talking about? You haven't got a clue. But I did it, and I worked hard. It's like I actually kept it quiet. Again, something else I never shared with people. So I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to the gym, wouldn't tell anybody, just worked on it myself. And I realized quite soon after going to the gym that actually I had a much better day when I went to the gym in the morning, despite having to push myself to get out of bed to go to the gym, which wasn't like people always think you're a morning runner. No, yeah, exactly. It's always hard, but doing it is really rewarding, and it really sets you up to have a good day. And so that was probably what kept me going more than anything. And yes, I wanted to get rid of my baby belly, but what I really noticed was the benefits that I felt internally, which couldn't be seen so much better. So I kept going to the gym, and then in 2017 I burnt out. My dad passed away in the March, and 8 weeks later I passed out with the wheel of my car and I went into a tree at 50 miles an hour. Wow. Now thankfully I woke up. You can see the scar across my head, big scars, staples across my head. Thankfully I woke up from a coma. And I really went on a journey after that. That's what led me down the path of changing careers. And because I realized it was really scary, I guess, to acknowledge that I'd actually burnt out, that my body had given up before I had. And so I realized at that point there was something wrong with the way I did things. So yes, I've got on with things. 2 years before that, I've been beaten up, and I was running at 100 miles an hour. I hadn't dealt with it because I didn't know how to, or that I needed to. And next minute, my body had given up before me. So that was really the catalyst for me to look in the mirror and go, okay, I don't think the way you deal with things is necessarily the healthiest. Like, I hadn't really ever spoken to anybody like about my stuff. I kept my things to myself. I picked up a bottle, went out partying if I wanted to release, that was my thing. That
was your go-to, yeah.
Yeah. And then after my accident, I couldn't train for 8 months because I had such a severe head injury. So I was in recovery for 8 months. And as the year went on, I went into a darker and darker place. And on that January, it was like, you know what, I'm coming back stronger. I don't know how, but I am going to come back stronger. And I'm going to do what I feel I've been destined to do my whole life, which is help people. Because I looked at my career and I was like, okay, right, am I really happy? Because I've just burnt out. Am I really happy? No.
Right. Yeah.
I carry a lot of pain with me. I knew that immediately. No, I've not dealt with things. No, I don't think the way I'm operating, I don't know what a better way is to operate, but I don't think the way I operate is best. I'm in a career that doesn't help people. I don't know if that's really serving my purpose. So, okay, I want to change careers. I want to come back stronger. Before I go into helping people, I need to become my best self.
Yes.
Because I've got staples across my head. I've just been in deep depression. Like, I'm not completely out of it at this point. So I can't just go, right, guy, yeah, look, I've done all these great things. I had this kind of childhood, and I gained a great career, and I bought and I've done these amazing things, and I can take you through this whilst I'm in a bad place myself.
That's
so
right.
Yeah, I was like, right, before I actually change careers, one, I don't think if I told you to do something, you would necessarily do it, and that would be helpful. Like, we can all get told, if everybody knew that I know, have a great business, you've got to do A, B, C, D, everybody would have a great business. If everybody knew that you've just got to do A, B, C, D, and you could be fit and healthy, everybody would be doing it. But it's not. Our brains don't work like that. No. So I was like, right, how do our brains work? So that was what sent me on the path of understanding finding neuroscience, understanding that how our brains work, that they're programmed. It was what sent me on the path to then I became an NLP and hypnotherapy master. And at the same time as I was discovering all of this, I entered a competition, which ended up to be bodybuilding. I didn't realize that at the time. And as soon as I found out what it was, even though it was really daunting, at that point, I was like, well, this is how I'm going to come back stronger. I'm going to do this just for me. This means not drinking. This means not doing the things I've always done. This means doing things differently. And this means doing something for me.
Yeah.
So I think learning that I was limited in my thoughts and beliefs about myself, it was a great companion to have at the same time as realizing all of that stuff. To actually be able to go on a self-love journey, to become my best self while I was uncovering all of the things about me that weren't helping me. So along those, from what was it, the May 2018 to then November 2019, I ended up winning competitions in the UK and then being taken out to America, where I won Miss Atlas and became a world champion.
Amazing. Congratulations.
So, thank you. So yeah, I set my goal to go from a coma to become a world champion. That goal not only became true, but along that time, I developed my process. I developed scars to strength, because I realized and learned the tools to be able to really help somebody shed the old version of them, shed what's been holding them back, and really step into the powerful human being that they can be and achieve what they're capable of achieving. So yeah, it always had a bigger purpose than me. I mean, yes, oh my God, yes, for me, it was amazing. But from the minute that I wanted to come back stronger, it wasn't just for me. It was always to be able to show and help other people to be able to do exactly the same.
Exactly, that they can do it.
That they can do it. Yeah.
And you know what? You mentioned that your brain is such a complex, and it's such a complex and powerful tool that we don't realize how much potential that we have, how much we can learn to overcome those bad times that we've gone through, the trauma that we've gone through, the whatever we're experiencing, that if we really put our minds to it, we can achieve anything. And you've overcome the trauma and you entered a bodybuilding competition, and which requires a lot of discipline. Like those times when you didn't want to wake up to go to the gym, the nutrition, everything had to be on point. But that's a discipline. But that's a true resilience, and you've overcome every aspect. Now, I am so curious to know about how confidence plays a huge part, knowing that when one is going through the trauma, how confidence and resilience plays a huge role. What would you say are those the tips that you can share with us, confidence and resilience?
Yeah. So, well, I think when you go through things, your confidence is knocked. You can have loads of confidence and then go through a really shit time experience, a real hurdle, and your confidence can go like on the floor. I've been there multiple times in my life. And I think one thing that is really important to do, and I think the first thing to do is focus on like, what's one thing I can be doing today? Like, what's one thing I could be doing for me that's going to help me is really helpful. Because like when we go through things, we don't feel very confident, but the way that we grow in confidence usually is by taking action. It's by moving towards something, receiving that, like I mentioned earlier, like that feeling, it was inside. The reward feeling isn't something you can experience on the outside, it's something that's internal. And when you get up and you, I don't know, go for that walk, you go to the gym, you go to that class, you go and do that thing, whatever it is, it don't need to be anything huge. It helps you to build that confidence, helps you to build back up your self-esteem, your self-worth. Like, 100%. And it's an internal job, isn't it? It's not external, it's an internal thing that you have to go through. So I think that, and then when you're in a position to, and I think the sooner you can do this, the better, is to see what positive can come out of what you've been through. And I know that can be very difficult when you're in the mix of it.
Yes.
Because it's like, how can I see anything that's positive in this? It's all negative, right? It's all shit because this has happened and I'm here, and except the sooner though that you can and doesn't dismiss, and this isn't about repressing that, but in order to get up and move forward, quite often you do need to sometimes just suppress a bit so you can get up.
Yeah.
And a great way to do that more healthily is to say, is certainly in my experience, is okay, what is one good thing, even if it's just one, like start with one. What is one good thing that I can take out of this shit situation, and focus on that one thing for now.
Yeah.
Right. And
Take
when
the
your
first step.
attention goes to everything else, yeah, come back to that one thing. And quite often what we tend, like, I don't think I should have gone through everything I've been through, or that it was all meant to happen. I'm not kind of in that belief system. But what I do know that has helped me is when I've been able to go, okay, well, let's face the facts. It did happen. So there is no, I can't change it. I can't go back. That the
Right.
only thing I can do is move forward. So recognizing that this is where I am now and it has happened. What is one thing I can take from it that is going to help me to move forward? Like, so yeah.
Having that self-acceptance. And I think that's the key. Having the self-acceptance, knowing that, okay, what has shaped you, your past, does really shape you for who you are today. And who you are today, Scarlett, is such an inspiration to so many people who are going through trauma. And friends, if you feel you are going through trauma or any kind of that's negative situation by family, friends around you, knowing that there is help, but you have to ask for help. And Scarlett, we need to ask for help if we know, right? And I think that's the first step. Taking that first step is to ask for help.
And knowing, like, I thought for most of my life my only option was to go to the doctors. I pretty much thought it was my only option. I have to go to the doctors and I have to say to them I'm not coping. And they're going to tell me either here's some pills, which they tried doing throughout my life and I've never accepted, but they every single time I turn up to a doctor, and the amount of people I know that are on antidepressants, like, is so
well,
they
that's always
the
the
first thing they
easiest
do.
way.
Oh, yeah. And it's just
Pills.
part of the medical process, isn't it?
It
Someone
is.
turns up, it's like a tick box. They turn up like this, here you go.
Exactly.
This is what you do. So your option, and a lot of people I know if they're where I was that I go to a doctor and they're either going to give me pills or send me to a counsellor. Well, I've seen a counsellor before. I studied to be a counsellor myself and I stopped because it doesn't, for me, help you overcome now. And that's my opinion, what's worked for me, what hasn't. And
Yeah.
I didn't want any of those options. But what I realize now is that there are many other options.
Oh yeah.
Like that isn't your only option. And I don't, like, for me, I gave up. It took me to almost die to actually go on a hunt again to understand stuff. I'm like, gee, if I said on my recent podcast, like, if I could do anything, like if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be do the healing work.
Yeah.
Find a way and do the healing work. Because if you don't, it's going to impact your life continuously in more negative ways than it has already. It's going to have more of an impact. Yeah, if you don't do the work. But I think understanding that, what we think traditionally are the options are not the only options out there. Like, I still discover things all the time, and it might not be something I now need or that I'm going to go use. But I don't know, I'll meet a therapist who does therapy in a completely different way, and the impacts and the effects that they have are amazing. And it's worked for them and it's worked for others, just the same as the approach I take. So yeah, I think there's so many other things out there. There's so many other ways of doing this work. So if you haven't found, like, if you're listening to this and you're going through something, you haven't found it yet, like, keep looking, don't give up. Like,
exactly.
There are, just because something didn't work for you doesn't mean that it means nothing will work for you. It just means you haven't found that thing yet. Like, you just haven't found what it is or who it is that you need to have in your corner, who's got the tools, the information to guide you.
Absolutely. Scarlett, well, you are such an inspiration to so many people, and it's been such an enlightening conversation. So my final question, what are you most proud of today out of all your accomplishments? What would you say is that greatest accomplishment you have?
Being a mum, 100%.
Right.
Yeah, being a mum, watching my young boy grow. Like I mentioned, like I carried a lot of stuff with me, and all I've done along my whole healing journey is do my best to heal, to share, to teach, but I look at my son, and I couldn't be prouder of the young man that he is, of how wise and kind and considerate, and yeah, I still, I think, I still think it's just amazing how we produce, how as humans we carry, we make a baby, and it comes out of us, and then it's actually a human being that has a brain, that has limbs, that actually grows, that
can function,
that functions. So yeah, I don't think it matters what else. I think here always been my greatest achievement and the thing I'm most proud of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, being a mother is the most gratifying feeling, to know that how much we do and how much we as a nurturers. But Scarlett, this is absolutely amazing. So where can people find you? How can they contact you?
So I'm on Instagram as Scarlett O'Connor UK. Might not be in the UK right now, but I am based there.
Nice. Yeah.
And my website is www.scars2strength.com. So on there you can find like free resources, access to groups that I run, yeah, lots of different things, and that's just continuously growing. So yes, if there's a few different kind of resources on there. One of the things I guess that we didn't mention but is really helpful, I've certainly found on my own journey and for others, is reflection. Like we said, like about taking responsibility, what went well today, what didn't. I've got a few things like that, like a reflection guide, other bits on my site. So if anybody wants access to that, they can jump on.
Perfect. So we will put that in the show notes. And so, friends, this has been such an enlightening conversation with an amazing Scarlett O'Connor. And I just want to share, we want to share that if you are facing trauma in your life right now, there is options. As Scarlett has mentioned, we have options, and it's to ask for help, because there's no shame in asking for help. I mean, I wish I had done that in my life, what I was going through, but we want to know. And so connect with Scarlett, go and connect with her. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, do subscribe, like, and leave us a review. Why? Because of the guests on the show. So connect with Scarlett O'Connor. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Experts podcast with Alka. Bye for now.